Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Arzan. Thank you for being here, braving this wonderful weather and swimming here. But appreciate you being here. Welcome to a fascinating discussion on leveraging arts for placemaking initiatives in Mumbai under the banner of ABIC's Sustainability Now series. A very special welcome for those who are joining us the first time, and I see many familiar faces, so thank you. Our multipolis Mumbai has been a hub for culture, conversation and creativity. Despite being a fast-paced, increasingly individualistic society, the arts of the city has effortlessly filled the urban gaps, united people, and made the city more livable and carved out a niche for ourselves on the global map. Our maximum city has limited public spaces. The question is, how do we optimally leverage this to uplift the city we love? Placemaking is one such initiative which integrates art, design, anthropology, urban planning, and community to give vitality to public spaces. Today we are here to unpack how the city's prolific art and artists and changemakers have reimagined and transformed the precincts of Mumbai. The venue for this dialogue couldn't be more apt. We're seated inside what used to be an old ice factory that has been given a new lease of life as an experimental New Age cultural venue that fosters community engagement. Allow me to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to request them to take their seat. Urban designer and co-founder Bombay 61, Ketaki Bhadgaonkar, sculptor and architect Arzan Khambatta, artist, director, and co-founder of st+art India Foundation, Hanif Kureshi, co-founder of Walks Mumbai, Alisha Sadikot, and filmmaker and journalist Saraiya, who will be moderating this evening's session. The speakers will share their thoughts on the importance of upscaling public spaces and how it ties communities together, their journeys of innovation and sustainably revamping the city through the arts, design, and much more. On that note, over to you, Naman, and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Arzan, and thank you to everyone for being here and braving the rains during Ganpati, which is, I know, quite a task. Just a couple of thoughts to kind of begin.
Yeah, just a little bit confused why I've been asked to moderate this, but I guess you don't pass up any opportunity to cross the ceiling and come to the center. So I was like, why not? Let's do it. But thank you for having me and encouraging me to do this. Really thankful and humbled to be moderating this panel of excellent speakers. Before we introduce each of them, I have some thoughts I wanted to share to get us started. Placemaking as a concept. I was talking to some of my friends saying, guys, you got to come to this. I'm moderating this. They were like, why are you always over-intellectualizing everything? What is placemaking? So to answer that question, we're also going to open it up to everyone. But beyond that, before we kind of get to answering what placemaking really is, I was thinking about certain things. That the idea of space in a place like Bombay means so much in so many different ways, right? Like, is it how you engage with the city? Is it how you see the city in different ways? Is it your relationship with the city in general and its different things that it has to offer, right? And I was kind of confused, and especially in this season, this question really comes up to me a lot more. You want to go out and enjoy the city in its glory in this weather where I could possibly drown, and this romanticized idea of Bombay thanks to Bollywood and the rains? Probably not. And there's also this talk of spirit of Bombay that invariably comes up on Twitter and on news channels. Oh, look at the spirit of Bombay, this man went to office on his raft. And I'm like, that's not really helping us also. Similarly, there's conversations about public art that you see, and some of them sometimes confound you, sometimes inspire you, sometimes impress you, and it really made me question a lot about my personal relationship with the city, which is often love and hate, because the city has let me become its, its own, but I also call this home now for more than a decade. I was wondering that, we have all these questions about what placemaking kind of means, but maybe I'd like to start by asking Ketaki, who's our president, urban designer on this panel, of what her idea of placemaking in general.
Musical chairs.
Sorry, I was afraid I'm going to fall. So.
What the idea of placemaking, means, and then we can obviously evolve to the next step of what placemaking means when in correlation with art. So, we can just go right into it.
Sure. Thank you, Norman. So the idea, because we are here to talk about placemaking, placemaking is something that helps us transform spaces into a place which is more meaningful, where people can, it's very important for people to interact with spaces, not just visually, but also physically. Like, what is their association with the place, how do they use it, what do they perform there, how the performance of the activities change over a period of time. So we have seen this traditionally through history, like people have been associated with spaces very deeply. They have a very deep connection with every space that they have lived with. Like, Charles Correa had been talking about this a lot when he's talking about different degrees of open spaces or public spaces that one interacts with. And they form a very important part of building a community, and because people come together, they talk to each other. I don't know if today we really have those kind of places, and we were just discussing like how malls have become those spaces where people actually meet each other or talk to each other. We don't know where to go, right? But if we see traditionally, even simple places like some work that we have done, which is in urban villages, a well also becomes a place where people come and interact, where they meet, where they celebrate. Festivals are celebrated around the well. Holi is the one such festival. So somewhere placemaking helps bring back this kind of association to reclaim these spaces that were part of the community for a very long time. And I think today there is a need because we have gone so much into privatization, and the way we have taken over high-rises, we have lost connection with the ground, because we have started living on 40th floor, 50th floor, and all we care about is what we see, what the view is. And we really don't have the connection with what is happening on the ground. And in fact, most of the time, as we said, we are spending in the cabs or any other modes of transport, like we must be using in trains or buses. But where is the time to really interact with what is happening on the ground? And I think that is very important part of our lives today, and we should definitely bring it up through placemaking. And arts is a very powerful medium to do that, because art is something that everybody connects with, and again, it's a visual way of connecting with the space, and placemaking is so much more than that also. So yeah.
Yeah, it's nice that you mentioned that, because I was on my way stuck in traffic. I was like, placemaking in Bombay definitely is your cab ride or your local train. And invariably, those are places where you end up forming connections with the city, with people. It provides you access or difficult access. And talking of like being stuck in traffic, you end up crossing a lot of public art, and a lot of that art being across the city is created by Arzan. So I'd like to, I guess, naturally segue into that. And talking about, as you said, formerly architect and now full sculptor, what is your idea and sort of understanding of placemaking from someone whose work is available and accessible in the most, easy way and on the ground level?
So basically, hi. Sounds coming through?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so to me, in a broader aspect, definitely. 20 years back, we did not have anything on our traffic islands. Then slowly, as like once upon a time, all our stations also used to be designed by government architects who used to be structural engineers. Slowly they had the idea that yes, design can be incorporated in a lot of other things, and so sort of we started getting more aware. So then similarly we came to sculptures in public spaces and all that. So the way it works generally is, we've got a lot of empty islands around, okay? So basically a corporate picks up an island, rents it from the BMC, and then he sort of comes to me to sort of provide that sculpture. Of course I study what sort of piece would go there, but sometimes I have a choice, sometimes I don't have a choice, okay? So it's a commission work. I'll give you an idea. Now, the CF Tires sculpture which happened in Nariman Point, they wanted a rhino. They wanted a rhino because that was their trademark. And a rhino, being an Indian animal, it's a very it's a very well-preserved animal. It's something that we need to look into. I sort of went into it. There are some people who don't give me a choice. So I went for the Worli thing. The Lokhandwala builder said, I want dolphins. That's it. That's what he wanted. And suddenly I had to sort of do that. I just sort of thought, what if he had told me to make a red Indian there? I wouldn't have done it, you know. So what I'm trying to say is that if it sort of matches with the city, with the location, then I do it. Now, why are these pieces important? It's to me, if you look back at Manhattan, okay, which is like a straight linear grid in plan and in elevation, and suddenly you're walking there and you find Calder's sculpture, which is like red waves and swirls. You find Picasso's head, which is again curved. All these curves visually, all these sculptures visually break you from your routine. They actually break you from your routine. They are like oases formed in the city where a person can look at, comment, think, and then move on. It doesn't have to be liked by everyone. Art is never liked by everyone. Some people can hate it, but at least it starts a dialogue, it starts a conversation. And in my case, what has happened is the areas have been started being known from my sculptures. Like for example, I remember one policeman saying, go Dolphin Island. Okay, now the rhino, when I put it, of course, I also realized that our general knowledge of animals is not so good, because when I put the rhino, the police will call it kangaroo, but it was not so. Anyway, it was not my fault. But what I'm trying to say is that these spaces act as breathers. They act as breathing spaces within your regular schedule. When you see something, not only my work, any sculptor's work, out in the open, a painted wall, it gives you a breather. It gives you a chance to look away from your phone and at least notice what is outside, and sort of definitely enhances the city 100%.
I'm going to skip you and come to Alisha and run this off with you. Alisha is someone who conducts walks across the city, or different areas and art-specific walks. Obviously, your interaction with the city as, in a way, as an instructor is quite on ground. You're almost teaching people in a way to look at the city in a different way, or in unique ways that perhaps they may have not sort of seen before. I want to understand from you how, obviously a city like Bombay, Mumbai is complex, lacking space in every possible way. How do you approach this idea of sort of placemaking, and I guess your relationship with the city more than anything else?
Thanks, Naman. So I just want to pull upon a few threads that we've already heard so far and say that so I'm speaking from the perspective of an organization called Walks Mumbai, and we essentially approach placemaking very much from the perspective of the viewer, right? So our entire effort is basically about building a growing community for art in the city. So what do I mean by this? All our work is essentially about creating opportunities or ways in which many more people can see art, find art, and that's really important, because if you think about where art resides in the city, it's often in galleries that don't have a location or a signage. It's often in art projects that are very temporary, right? It's 3 weeks in a shop window and then it's gone. So we work towards helping people find art when it is on view. I mean, that's the most exciting thing about the art world, how temporary it is, and there's always new things happening, but that's also the challenge for a lot of people. Oh, I heard something's happening, how do I get to it in time, right? The other thing we want to do is give people the opportunity to talk about art, to engage with it, and really if placemaking is about making a place meaningful, we sort of look at, again, as we said, you have to be creative in Bombay, so we look at any kind of place with art, or space with art, that can be made more accessible, more appealing, more meaningful to wider numbers of people, right? So what do I mean by this now?
I'll just give you a couple of examples. We could do something like a public art walk, an evening where anyone in the city can join us who wants to do something different. But maybe we also ask the artist to join us while they're working on a mural, okay, or a mural that's already complete. And so there's an interaction with someone who's actually made a work of art. You could say art galleries are private places, but what if we do an art gallery hop where anyone can join us? We've had couples out on dates, we've had families wanting to do different things, and it becomes a way of not having to ring that doorbell and enter on your own into an empty gallery. We're there, we give you the amount of context and cues that you need, and then it's about having, it's a conversation with friends around art. That's what we're going for. We've also gone into artist studios, and the last thing I'll say is there are so many art spaces which are technically private, right? They're in corporate offices, they're in organizations, but we work with them to sort of open up those private spaces for public engagement, right? So our placemaking is really, okay, we can't create space, we're not designers, we're educators, we're art historians, we can't create space. But hey, why don't we work with Bombay 61 that has created this incredible art space in Versova and get more people who follow us for art stuff into that space to meet with them, to learn from them, and just basically to realize that Bombay is full of amazing things and they can access it in their own way.
I love how everyone's just giving me a very natural segue. So talking about public art and like the Versova project, we come to Hanif, who's a co-founder of the Street Art Project, which I'm hoping most people are aware of, because if you've had your eyes open in the last 5-7 years across India, you definitely seen a mural that the Sculptor and Foundation has kind of created. And closer to home, a few years ago we did the Sculptor Art Project. So, I mean, as the co-founder and artistic director of Sculptor Foundation, what is your idea of placemaking? Because at least for someone like me and a lot of my friends who were perhaps not so interested in the art world, which, like you said, can be closed, it became so accessible. So, like, what has been your experience with placemaking in general?
Yeah. So, since we kind of like, the topic of this is like placemaking in the city, and I've been thinking, so what is that placemaking and what do we do? And I selected some projects and I thought maybe these projects are placemaking, but then slowly I started to see that everything we do is kind of placemaking, because before that it was just a wall, but then after an intervention it starts to interact, or it starts to have a feeling where you see something and if you see one image every day, you start to have that relationship with that image also, whichever is there in the public space. So I think most of the works are kind of like placement, automatic, like kind of like placemaking in some way. I don't know if any of you have been to the St+art art project. Have you, all of you, kind of like seen? It was 5 years ago in 16, 17. And most of the time, whenever we meet people, someone from Mumbai, and we talk about that, people remembers that, oh yeah, there's something like that happened, and there's nothing happened after that, but there's always a memory of it. And I think those memories are also kind of like somewhere, if we didn't do that, that place was just there, it is still there. But when there's an intervention happens, then you start to have that feeling, and I think that feeling is what makes us human, right? And yeah, part of the city.
Yeah, which brings me to actually Ketaki. I'd like actually to take each of the speakers through some of the specific art projects and like works that they've been a part of. So maybe Ketaki can talk to us about the Versova project that you recently done and how that came about, and maybe a little bit more about that.
It was last year that we did 2 placemaking projects in Versova, Kolkata, which was in collaboration with Ministry of Mumbai's Magic, MMN. And so the idea, because it's a Kolkata, it's an urban village where it is a fisherman settlement, and they have been residing over there for over 1,000 years now. And so what was so peculiar of this place was that it used to be a village, and which is densifying over a period of time, and the densification is happening in such a way that people have started to reclaim their traditional open spaces into housing spaces because the families are growing. There are a lot of migrants which are coming in, and it's going denser and denser over a period of time. And typically we see that with these villages there is a slum narrative that gets attached very easily because of the population that is residing there. And so we thought that the younger generation was in a way losing the sense of pride of being in such a culturally and traditionally rich community. So, so they have been losing the association with the space. So what we thought of was to select a few community spaces which have been very important for the community and to the older generations. But it was a way of showing that a place could be transformed with a very minimal transformation, which can be more useful, and the younger generation can have can build a new association with those kind of places. So this was first one where I spoke about the well. So this was a community well which was there in the settlement, and we had a lot of stories of how the people who are old right now, how they used to play holi around this, they used to drink water out of this well, and how they have been very close to this. But nowadays nobody needs wells, right? Everybody has tap waters and taps. So how could we bring back the association to these kind of community spaces? So this is the kind of transformation we brought about, and art was one medium to bring this attention towards the community and the space. And this was the second one where this was a dilapidated house, and people used to throw garbage right outside it. So this was something that we transformed into a little smaller public space. So the mural is the highlight of it, which signifies that particular place where they're talking about the Ganesh Festival and the brass band, which is very famous over there. And we created like a little seating space around it, and so that completely transformed the space in a way that now nobody wants to throw garbage there. So I think there are some images which will show you how it is being used now. So, so it is also important how the community keeps up with the association even after the transformation is done, and how they keep interacting with the space. So we can see some kids, they're trying to catch fish from the well water, and they're looking at the fish. And this one is now because after the seating was created, now there's no waste there, but there are flower sellers who have come in, so which is like a very beautiful thing that we thought. Then, this year, very recently, just a week ago, we hosted this exhibition again with MMM. This is called Samvad Khadija, which was Conversations of the Creek. And we tried to create this conversation around the ecosystems, which is again highlighting the Koli community in this, and how we can use, how we can leverage visual narratives or artwork to talk about the Cree ecosystems within the community. And so here, just trying to bring in the idea of transforming community-owned spaces, which could be opened up for people to access and have this broader conversations. So this was a place which we had identified, and can you go next, please? Yeah. So we transformed it into an exhibition space where people could come, interact. They would more of an awareness around the ecosystem. So this is not. So this is a way we have used art and photos to create a place which can bring in people from the city together to talk about things that, yeah, so this is what it was. So this was about a Warli art workshop that we conducted, because Warli is also a form of storytelling art form. So this was another yeah. So this is from our team, from the community, who was trying to explain. So we are this is also activating the community in the way to bring in people and talk about the transformation that is happening. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Arzan, coming to you, we've done all these wonderful sculptures across on traffic islands across the city, but the particular one that I guess we discussed, we'd like to talk about was the Ims Vikrant one. And so there's a funny story which I've still not heard, so I guess we can get in.
The funny story or the other? This was a
Yeah.
serious story.
Tell us about sculpture.
So basically, I mean, I will bring. The photographs are just happening in the background.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So coming to the Ims Vikrant, as you know, it was being used as a event place and all that when it was docked. I had attended a couple of art events on that ship, and then finally the government decided that there was no place to dock it, so that they sold it literally on its weight in iron, in kg, literally to a bangarwala, literally to a bangarwala. So they scrapped the whole ship. Now it's just that we don't realize it, but that ship has got so much history. That ship has done so much for us. It was our first aircraft carrier, and I didn't know its importance till a couple of people came to my studio. They called me, said, "Can I come to your studio?" This was his name is ex-Commodore Medioma Bhada, ex-fighter pilot from the ship, who was stationed on the Vikrant. He was in charge of the fighter ships and all that. And he came to me with a couple of other retired fighter pilots, and they said, "Okay, we are disgusted with the decision. The ship is being broken down and actually sold in terms of kgs of iron. There are bangarwalas and coming and sort of, picking like vultures, just going away." And he's saying what they want to do is, because that ship meant so much to them, and he said the ship is like a mother to us. He said when we used to go out on the decks, fly out, sort of probably bomb a few other things and then come back in the evening. He's saying the first thing they would do is go in the mess and have their hot soup. And he said it felt as if they had come home to their mother. That is what he told me. And he said it was terrible that there is nothing existing of this ship. So interesting. They took me to the scrapyard. The fighter pilots themselves pulled in the money. They bought scrap. They made me select the scrap. They bought the scrap, and then they made me do the sculpture, which is like a memorial for the Ims Vikrant. So it was so important to them. And I told them, I said, look, I'm not going to make an exact model of the Vikrant. I don't want to do that. We'll make a slightly abstracted version. And I mean, hats off to them. No no intervention in terms of design. They said just go by whatever you want. Even the Devanagari script that you see of the Vikrant is original. Everything out there is original from the Vikrant, and including the anchor chain, which is like a 3-inch dia link. So that made sense. There's a story behind the piece, and it's there because people felt strongly for it. And that's why I love it. It's one of my most favorite public works.
Shall we see more of your work?
This is the Indus bull. That's a 15-foot bronze sculpture made for Indus. Interesting story with this, not in terms of a story, but this is Zebu from the Indus Bank logo. Okay? And so what I've done is it shows 3 parts of their life from when they started till now. So basically the rear end is very literal, it's very lifelike. It comes into the center, into the machine age where you see the rivets and all that, and then you have these cuts like in the computer sort of aided design, sort of this framework sort of thing. So it showed 3 sort of actual timelines of the bank. So it's interesting.
Like you shared a bunch of these stories, I'm sure, Alisha, when you were conducting a lot of these walks, which kind of help people engage with sort of the city in a very different way. We'll come to it. So there's lots. So obviously you try to kind of unearth like stories, which in a way helps audiences that come to these walks engage in artwork and I guess build relationship with the city. So maybe what are like some of the cool, unique, oddball stories that you've come across, or anecdotes while conducting some of these walks across the city, or maybe an evolution of someone's relationship with the neighborhood that you may have seen evolve.
Thanks so much for not prepping me for this question at all.
Some stories at the top of your mind, and that is the best one.
So actually, I'm just going to build on what Arzan just said about the Vikrant sculpture. And now we have a Vikrant model right around the corner,
Yes.
which is fake. It's just a model.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that this story about this artwork is actually not accessible to a lot of people who are walking around that area on their own or passing through. Right? How would we know this story? And that's where sort of the walks come in, right? Because it's not about me. It's not. I think it's just about being that person who can, give them access to some of the stories that lie behind what they might see and have already built a relationship with. But also we're in Ballad Estate, right? We're actually very close to a really interesting bit of naval history that was in Bombay's 200 years ago, there was a shipping company that was building ships for the Royal Navy. I'm saying this in relationship to the INS Vikrant. And there were ships that were made in Bombay that set sail. The American national anthem was written on board one of the ships that was made in Bombay and launched from here. Neville House is where, it's the headquarters of Bombay Dyeing. It's right opposite. And that's of course the Wadia family that was the shipbuilders. And they became so good that the Royal Navy is building their first ships outside of the UK in Bombay. Right? They're setting sail from here. They're participating in all these battles. And one of the ships they made 200 years ago is still afloat in England. It's part of the Royal Navy Museum, National Museum of the Royal Navy. You can go on board. It's called the HMS Trincomalee. It's one of the oldest warships still afloat in the world, made in Bombay. You can see the hammer that the Parsi shipbuilder, they used to put in a nail before they launched the ship. Everything. You can get a tour, you can get married, you can have corporate events. I saw it. It's in the north of England. As a student of museum studies, we were taken to the HMS Trincomalee. And here we are, we're in Ballad Estate, and we can't keep the Vikrant. I mean, we scrap it for metal. So that's the kind of stuff that gets people interested. Oh my God, this whole shipbuilding history is available elsewhere, and we can't even do something that happened right here. And then when you link it to the INS Vikrant public sculpture, that is when I like to build relationships or connections between different bits of history in different parts of the city, and you can see it that it's working with people, and it builds their relationship with the city. So that's just one example.
I love this panel because they just provide me the perfect segues. So we talk about the relationship with the city and stories. Beyond Sassoon Art project, after a Sassoon multiple times with my girlfriend then used to live in Neighbourhoods, so I'd be like, I love property. So, I've never entered it, but years later I was like, this place, we're doing art here like we did with Lodi Art District in Delhi, Ketaki Art District in Chennai. As the St+art Foundation, what role do you think, one as the foundation, but obviously that does so much public art, big scale murals, how you've seen that evolve, the city's fabric?
It changes completely over a period of time. Just talking about Kannagi Nagar, right? If you Google Kannagi Nagar before we started work on it, you'll mostly get the bad news. Someone's night, and someone's some robbery and some murder and all these kind of things. And that's all we could get from Kannagi Nagar. Now today, if you search Kannagi Nagar, it's completely different, and the whole narrative of Kannagi Nagar has also changed. It's not just the news or the Google results, but it's also on ground, where people on ground have also started to have more respect for their spaces. It also puts the pressure on the government to also upkeep the space, because it's always there are always people shooting around it. Nowadays, all the youngsters making videos, and then it comes in one of the Tamil movies, and then it so all of these things which makes that space more important. And once you let the people also understand and they've been part of it, it becomes easier to work in these spaces. Of course, when we started, it was very difficult to explain someone that what's going to happen and what we're going to do. What you see is some images of Sassoon Dog, but Kannagi is a different story. But each of these spaces within the city. Here, for example, we work in Dharavi, but we don't call it Dharavi, we call it Mahim East. Before that, there was no Mahim East as a concept, but now if you do Mahim East, it only will make you reach that space. So we termed it differently. At the same time, Lodi Colony was a road we made Lodi Art District, and the same with Kannagi Art District. So all these spaces, not just changing the name, but the whole feeling and the surroundings and people's thinking, and when people start seeing other people coming in, they also feel more proud that they've come to see our space. And I think that's the ultimate thing, to give people the ownership of their own spaces, and that'll slowly change our city's fabric.
Definitely beyond obvious, positive perception that it brings about to these neighborhoods. You've definitely, the St+art Foundation has provided a great background to fashion shoots, people who make reels, and everyone across.
It's the most popular pre-wedding shoots, and all kind of things which I never thought that things will things like that will happen, but it's happening.
In fact, just yesterday I was doing for some other reason the Sculptor art project and trying to see what's a good recap video and the number of video recaps that people themselves created, giving kind of like a walk tour of the Sculptor art project. It's a bit, it helped see, I guess, people's relationship in a way. Talking about that, I'm going to leave this open now and not going like a sequence. What role do sort of the municipal corporations, authorities, government bodies, and so to say, generally decision-making people kind of play in these kind of projects and initiatives? Because we know it can't always be amazing, but how would we like to sort of, how have you navigated it? Each of you could take.
Yeah, I'm sure we all have our own government, dealing with government stories. I've got a few, but I mean, they can be all good ones and bad ones. Just to let people explain, like talking about Lodi, and we started working there. So the Lodi colony is in Delhi. It gives there's NDMC, which is the New Delhi Central, South Delhi Municipal Corporation, PWD, and there's one or two more bodies. So there are 5 bodies which works within the same space. You go this side of the road is something else, you go that side of the road is something else. And we got the permission, we started working there. We finished 2 murals. While we're in the second mural, one engineer comes and stops the work, saying this belongs to the urban ministry, urban development ministry, and you can't work here. So we had to kind of stop the process. And we did the whole process for 1 year, kept going to Nirman Bhavan, kept going to these different spaces, and finally we get that permission to work there. And all we wanted them to say is, yeah, like it's okay to do this, but it's not that easy. But then now it's easier. So I think overall working in public spaces is becoming easier than what it used to be.
I guess when they have a proof of concept, it becomes easier. I remember one time in Lodi, we were mid-work, I was photographing it, and someone came and said, "Ki upar ki 2 feet aap nahi paint kar sakte." I remember that.
Yeah,
so quite odd. It was a 40-foot mural that we painted, and one government officer came and said, "Ye 2 foot upar aap itna permission aap de sakte." And I remember it was quite a confusing.
Yeah, I think that was part of that's a Delhi Urban Art Commission. There is also Mumbai Urban Art Commission now, which has been formed for the last 2 years, 2-3 years, I think. Yeah, 2 years. In Delhi, the Urban Art Commission was set up to make sure that the aesthetics of Delhi remains the way it is. And they would, so within the government, if nobody wants to work, or if somebody wants to kind of pass the file, they'll say, DUAC ko refer kar do. So then once they refer to DUAC means only like once in 2 months, and every time you can go for the meeting, there are 20 people, nobody gives you any decisions. Aap website pe pad lena result, then they'll publish on the website. The whole process would take like 6 months to get somewhere, but eventually they agree. But same way, the Mumbai Urban Arts Commission's role is different, but I don't know I'm not really sure that what they're doing, if you know.
No, I know. There's definitely better. I'm on the
great.
So, I seriously am on the
Okay, great.
So this was from 2 years back. Okay. And this is how I deal with the municipality. Okay. So it was from the architect Ratan Batliboy is there. Mrs. Anita Rani from the museum is there. And the designs pour in. Nowadays we can't even, one meeting has got 20 people coming into it, and they have this compulsion of making sculptures on every island. We said that is not the idea. We sort of try to tell them to landscape the island, have more green cover, etc., etc. One thing we've determined is not to allow fiberglass sculptures, because that being so inexpensive, the corporators get artists by the dozen and fill up all the islands with all the most ridiculous fiberglass sculptures that you can ever imagine, Now, the problem is that we have managed, you won't see our work, because we managed to turn down a lot of works. We've not given permission to a lot of works. But there are still some artists and corporations who have put the works even without us approving it. You know, because I don't think we still have the power to remove it after we've got that. I don't know so what we are doing. We're still sort of sitting with the municipal commissioner and telling them, give us a little more power so we can have little more control. I'll just give you an idea. There's a divider near Chitra Cinema, okay? 150 meters. This chap came up with the proposal, local corporation and the artist came up with a proposal of 10-foot sculptures, 5 of them. One had penguins, one had Bhangra dancers, one had a kabaddi match and one had some other, I forget. So, I mean, we tell them have some synergy with the space, sort of reduce it, you don't need to fill up every island, you know, sort of have more green cover, but I think they're going ahead with it. So, the committee is very good, but no one listens to us.
I mean, Ketaki, what's been your experience with the committee?
I don't know, thankfully or I don't know, we have not really worked with any government officials for placemaking projects because largely our work has been with the community. But that has its own challenges because everybody is not on the same page also. Because all of these projects that we have done are with community participation where we have to bring everyone together and they have their own dynamics and politics which is also very interesting in that sense. But something that to add to what Arzan was also saying that you know it is the adaptation or the imitation of artwork everywhere is very scary for me because we see municipal corporations commissioning every single wall, bridges, columns to be painted, and I think that is scary because when we approach the community that we want to do placemaking and we would like to do something, the immediate reaction that we got from them was, "Acha, wo sab jagah kar rahe, wohi karna hai na, sab painting kar rahe hai abhi sab." But that's not what it is all about. It's not about just painting a wall and it's done. So it is so much more than that, which was a very good experience for us in that way.
In fact, while you were saying this attitude of, you know, it just being good painting over here, I mean, it's quite expected, I'd say. In fact, I was thinking on my way here, the amount of time you spend in the city looking out at a board which says metro's coming. If each of alternate those could have been a panel given out to different artists, and if it decided for free. I think it would make it, like it could be comic panels, it could just be informative, but I just got to see that this metro is coming. I kind of got the point 5 years ago. But it's kind of still not coming, right? So I feel there's so much opportunity to sort of, I guess, exploit all this public space. Which talks about, you know, breaking the idea of, I'd like to come to Alisha for this, making places accessible, like we were talking about earlier, breaking down this notion of sort of the closed, privatized spaces in a way which otherwise, like I was telling you, my relationship with art galleries is not pleasant, because obviously I'm addressed, or like I'm smelling, or maybe they're smelling too good, I don't know. So how has Art Walks kind of provide sort of what do you do to change this?
So I'm just going to also add to the earlier question. The way we're able to do so much is by not working with the government at all. We work with art that's already on view. And actually, it can be good, it can be bad, it can be downright ugly. I think some of the most fun public conversations we've had, and I don't know if this falls under placemaking, it's public artworks that people absolutely detest. They're like, why do I have to stare at this for the rest of my life, every day, right? So that can also be a way of sort of having a conversation around what makes, what should make it to the islands does. And as we all know, there's a lot of clutter in Bombay. So, there's a lot of clutter. So, it's not always a good reaction to the art that's out there, but I think that's a good conversation starter. Okay, so I don't know if you guys would agree with me, but one of the strongest reactions we've had is to the Dabba Wala at Mahalakshmi. I mean, that's such a great idea. He's actually a great artist. But that particular work, I don't know if anyone can picture it. He looks like he's got pox on it. Like, why? It's such a great idea. And this was not my wording. It's what people have come to me with. Like, how can you take something that is so incredible and boil it down to this? Right? So, of course, art galleries is a whole other thing. It's not for me, all of that. But many people actually begin their foray into the art world by looking at art that's around them, that's in their space, in a sense, before they venture into the galleries.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess...
Can I answer your question?
Keep it open.
briefly, which kind of brings me to, I mean, because I have clearly lots of opinions, thank God I'm not a activist or leader. It does help initiate conversation, and in fact more so over the last 5-10 post-geo world that we live in, sort of, it's internet has become so, in a way, democratic that everyone's got opinions, everyone's got things to say, everyone's got access more than anything else. And I think we saw the first-hand success of the Street Art Festival and sort of its popularity on the internet and Instagram. And if so, I mean, what role would you say, technology in some way played in boosting, I guess?
Yeah, I think when people think of street art, right, they think it's street, but I think it's digital. Because we all know Banksy and everyone knows Banksy, but nobody's seen Banksy's work in real life. But we know most of the work Banksy's done. And same thing is applicable for a lot of other artists whose work you have seen, but you never kind of seen it physically.
Yeah,
and that really kind of so with the internet, it is kind of definitely become more democratic. And on the other hand, if I really see, and if I see that 5 years ago in Sassoon-Logwood or in Pune, which we did last time, these kids are coming in with their phones open. They just want to they're really not looking at the art. They're just look how cool place I am in. And or rather they're backdrops. It's kind of we're creating backdrops for the young generation in some way. So that they can be show their coolness. It kind of changes, it's different. One way it's good, the other way it's kind of nobody's really experiencing it how they're supposed to, but rather it's tokenism kind of an experience.
Yeah, I think it's more about look, I was here and I experienced this.
Yeah.
So maybe a good aspect is, I guess, it perhaps may draw more people to come to it and be like, "Mujhe yahan hona chahiye," or I want to experience this. And for a lot of people, it's I do remember facing this, I won't say issue, but the crowds at Sassoon over the weekends when it would be open to the public, sometimes you couldn't really see some of the artwork because there's so many people who want a picture of it rather than experience it.
Yeah, people queue up. People queue up to take pictures. If you put something famous here, for example, Mona Lisa. If they put Mona Lisa, people just gather around Mona Lisa and take a picture of it.
Yeah, in fact, the most common picture now of the Mona Lisa is people looking at the Mona Lisa on Instagram.
Exactly, that is what it is. So, I mean, we all have seen it. It's nothing but you want to kind of be there physically.
Arzan, when you are now thinking of new islands and I guess initial stuff, does this digital effect or layer kind of come into play sometimes? Maybe subconsciously, I don't know.
I'm okay with people photograph it and all that, but I'm against selfies. I remember when the Vikrant was inaugurated, there so many people came, and so many of the sailors, instead of photographing that, like you're saying, they're backing it and they're photographing it with themselves there, So I couldn't tell them anything, but I'd say, why do you want your photograph in every photograph? Just very click. I mean, you're going to Europe, you have such beautiful places everywhere, wherever. Everywhere you don't have to have your face in the picture, I mean, it's just not, so, I mean, it's okay.
I also had similar sort of thoughts, but I think maybe as you grow older and do more directly advisor, I feel it's more about people want to build that relationship and be okay, I was here. I experienced it, but that's it. And that has kind of become, I guess, the documentation of it. We can perhaps look down at it or feel judgy about it, but I guess for a lot of people it is that first time experience and memory creation of experiencing artwork. Now, Julie speaking, have you had different, since you talk about memory and creating sort of this engagement with art and the place, a lot of your projects are community-driven, community-based, especially this Bombay project. What are your thoughts? What are the kind of discussions you have as a studio, when you approach these sort of projects?
I think since we are talking about digitalization, globalization, so in a way that we also felt that a lot of our ideas of space or a place comes from very westernized concepts of what one should be doing in a public space. Like we fancy sipping on a lawn, or we fancy looking at artwork, but in a way that, like how we're saying, we just want to take a picture of it and we're done. But we really, we are losing the way we have always been interacting with spaces, or what do we do as Indians, what do we do in public spaces is something which we are losing out on. Because when we did this project also, most of the young people were talking about how they have seen something in Venice or Taiwan, and I don't know, I mean, it was a lot of westernized ideas that start coming to play. But we often tend to forget what we already have, what is the value of what we have, or what are the assets that we have in our public space. And there are these very small things which can activate a place very nicely, and which can make it more meaningful. I think that is something which is very important.
Talking about activation, love this panel, great segue again. Alisha, obviously you introduce people to these new places, but we spoke about this a couple of days ago, but the role technology kind of adds to this. We've also spoken about the selfies and accessible democratization of the internet, but something you guys do is create like art maps, and which are kind of open source. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So this is just a tiny project and no one knows about it, but our eventual aim is to take ourselves out of the equation, right? So if we, for example, create the opportunity for people to come with us to see an archive that's otherwise closed to public, and it's this incredible collection that you come with us once a month to see. Hopefully by putting systems in place in a year, they'll be able to host these events without us. I remember a few years ago, maybe some of you have heard of the concept of open house in other cities. There were 3 or 4 of us who said, why can't we have an open house Mumbai? There are all these incredible places that are actually private. Can we open them up for one weekend? And I kid you not, okay, we were also really young and we didn't know what we were doing, but we were laughed out of people's offices. They were like, this is never going to happen, because the idea of who is coming in and what that space would be like. I think Mumbai has changed since then. I think there's a lot of sort of rethinking in how people look at the collections and spaces they own, they look after, and also who audiences are and can be. So on the one hand, with events, we're looking at creating systems that allow that to happen. But also, why does it always need to be that if you want to learn about even art on facades of galleries or street art, why do you have to go with someone, right? Is there a way that you can access this information on your own time? It doesn't even have to be an evening that you dedicate to artwork. If you're driving past something, is there a way of actually knowing what the story is behind something that you hate, but maybe that'll change your mind, okay, I didn't see it that way. So we're really literally, we have a Google map that anyone can plug into, take a picture of an artwork. We might add a little bit of context to it. It's on Google Maps so anyone can access it. So it's just a link, and it allows you to sort of navigate the city. Again, it's just a very new project, but hopefully it can become something that people populate. So that's the idea behind that. But we also put galleries on there. I was telling Naman earlier that we actually correct locations for galleries, We're out there doing that because if we want people to meet us, we need to make sure it's accurate. And most galleries are, they're getting better, but many galleries don't even have a correct pin. We're like wandering lost looking for these places, right? So we want to make sure some people are nodding in the audience. That's what happened to some people. But yeah, we just try to make the whole process a little bit.
Exactly. Somewhere in Calcutta, I missed the door. I'm here, but it's not here.
It's literally like 4 blocks away.
It's like a speakeasy. Yeah. Talking about Google Maps, something that the Street Art Festival did really well. Obviously, there were guided walking tours of the Sasuda Art Project and Logi Art Colony, but now, I know this because
now it's changed, right? Earlier, when we approached Google to do a streetscape of these art districts, they said Indian government does not allow this. But now it's okay to do it, and now it's accessible as well. So, which is, I think, another way of also experiencing the city, which wasn't there before.
Yeah. So just for context, if you go on Google Maps and that would be our district or Sasuda Art Project, it kind of shows you a walking route that is ideal for you to be able to experience each of the artworks. That gives you information about the kind of replacing your role in these walks,
It has
but
to
enable.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's a drop in the ocean. You can't talk and meet with everyone.
Yeah. So it kind of gives you information about the artist, a little bit about artwork, and kind of gives you the ideal walking route that you should be like taking. And so, I mean, besides that, you like just can you talk to us a little bit more about, you know, we're coming up on the new edition of not just the Sundar project, but the Mumbai Festival.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that and like what we should be expecting?
So since the last time we worked 5 years ago in 2017, now we've been thinking of doing a festival, and then COVID happened, and now finally we are here. We've been preparing for the Mumbai Urban Art Festival, which is going to happen in Mumbai every 2 years. It's going to start from November 20th to February 20th. It's going to be on for 4 months. Sasundog will be open again on December 20th, and it will be there for 3 months. We're going to take over a lot of areas within the dock, and we're going to have landmark murals within the city. Some of them on the highways, which you will see in the time to come. We'll be also having some permanent and temporary installations within the city as well, we will also have some traveling installations. So we're going to activate different parts of the city. There's a big team who's been working on it. We've been working day and nights to make this festival happen. And this is kind of like, thank you to Asad's idea to kind of like at least have an announcement of this festival through this panel discussion. Because all of you are here from all this like rains and traffic and all that. It's great that you guys are here, and like, I mean, it's a great conversation which we are having, and this would be the best place for us to kind of at least talk about what's coming up, and also open up to all of you and see if you guys have like any ideas, and because the festival is going to be for the city, and we are some people who's interested in city and how city functions, so we can it's open for all to also. And we're mainly working on 2 themes. The major theme is around the water, where how the city has been formed with 7 islands, and how water plays an important role through the trade, through part of its history, and even today, like when we're still in the process of reclaiming our lands, and we're still kind of like expanding our boundaries, and the city's relationship with water is kind of like very strong. And we all just experience like with the rains, all the many more factors. Water is a very open, large theme which we are working on. And another thing which we are working on is the city as bazaar, and how we interact with the city. So these are the 2 larger themes on which the festival will function on. We are going to have 2 different venues within the Sassoon Docks, where we'll be hosting these 2 different exhibitions, as well as there will be more interventions around the city. There are going to be around 40 to 50 artists, Indian and international artists who will participate for this festival. It's going to be a 4-month-long festival, which is very like 4 months long is like a long time. Yeah, it's for the city and for the time to come as well. So it's going to go slow that way.
Yeah, that's good. Which actually, again, which brings me to Arzan. First as a citizen first, and then as an artist and sculptor. What sort of role do you think art and these sort of initiatives that all that we've spoken about kind of play into sort of tourism in some way? It's something I know also you want us to kind of think about. And it actually got me thinking. I have no answers, hence I'm asking you. How do you think this plays into like tourism? Like for instance, Kochi is, people just flock to it. So can these kind of initiatives have a way?
100%, definitely. I mean, that's what I've been trying to tell as a part of the MCMC. That's what we are trying to educate the corporations and all that. I'll tell you, I had, so when this came up, this Chitra thing, okay, that Bhangra dancer, penguin and that fellow, and the artist complained that if I don't do this, he's a good artist, He said, if I don't do this, I will not get the work. Because it's saying the cooperator is who, the fellow, he wants it there, with of course his name written and everything and all that. And we said, why don't you show your own designs? He showed us his own designs and they were very good. So I said, why don't you push these over there? So he said, no, he will not let me do it. He will not give me the work unless and until I don't do this. And that's when I said, if you, each and every artist does that, our city is going to have such terrible art and it's going to be known for that. You know, we need to change the mindset of the public and the corporation to get in contemporary art. Now, you know what the cooperator said? He's saying when we're putting art like that, he's saying the kind of sculptures you do, you're catering to the elite. You're not catering to the masses. Now, I said, if that is the same, you see a new product, you use it, correct? You use new phones, you use new cars. Just because you don't know what the contemporary art is like, you don't have access to it and you don't want it. The more we show this to the public, the more they will get attuned to it and the more we will sort of see this art out. You know, it will get accepted by everyone. And yes, imagine phenomenal art like this throughout the island. Imagine, I mean, your murals and paintings and the Sasunda project and all that. Of course it will get in tourists. It will get in tourists and maps like that will help them take them around the sculptures and the art of Mumbai. So 100% you are capitalizing on that. Definitely good art will get in tourism for sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
Can I
Yep.
add to that? Sorry, I just wanted to add, you know, people saying, oh, they don't get it, that's something we should all be fighting against because that's assuming people don't
Correct,
get art.
correct.
And I think all you
True.
need is the right sort of context and cues. I've had school principals, teachers, they're so against anything to do with modern and contemporary art. You can take them to the gateway, they'll say okay. But you say, let's take them to see an art exhibition, they'll say no until they do it the first time. And everyone, you know, so I think this is just a lazy way out of saying, oh, they don't get it, and only certain people get it. So it can be ended.
Absolutely.
Before I comment, it's also about the visual education, right? How visually literate we are. All of us have a different kind of like visual understanding. Something may be good for me as visual, and something maybe you hate it, I like it. You know, there's always going to be that. And curating public art is never going to be perfect because there's always going to be a variety of people you are talking to, and their backgrounds and their education is completely different. So you can't like make everyone happy.
True. So I'll just tell you about this little project we did about 6 years back. Myself, Brinda Miller and Sunil Badran, we did an installation made from mouse traps. And this was Sneha Sadikot, the NGO. We got together, photographed them, made them write what their wishes were and all that. And we made a huge installation. And you know where we kept it? On CST station platform. We actually cordoned it so that the people who come out from the trains every day could view it. The amount of curses that we've got that day. We think that chalne ka jagah nahi hai, pura block kar diya, ye wo. But 10 people waited and saw it. You know, that makes a difference. If it's there, then, I mean, let them curse it, let them do what the hell they want. But till they don't see this form of art, they will not move forward and we'll get stuck in that era only, you know. So it's like that.
Has your experience been similar?
No, I really agree with what everybody is saying. So tourism, yes, definitely it will play a very important role, but not only in terms of getting people, but to initiate dialogues around art and dialogues around making meaningful spaces. I think that is more important. The way we are, all of us are, I think, working towards it. I think what Hanif mentioned also about understanding the city through water, the relationships with water, or bazaars. So that is something, these conversations are very important. I think that will definitely help through festivals like these or placemaking projects like this.
Right. Just one, I guess, more point I'd like to touch upon before we open it up for questions was what can we do? A little bit of like future gazing and prophesizing, I guess. What can we do from a public policy standpoint? From, you know, there's obviously public is interested. It's unfair to say that people are not visually literate. I mean, you know, it's like you're taking away the opportunity and saying you've got opportunity nahi hai. That sort of a thing, right? So what do you think, you know, we can do to sort of better our attitude towards public art, which in turn betters your relationship with the city as well?
I think it is very important to start involving people at ground level, and individual communities need to get involved. So probably like at ward level or at an area level, we should definitely have different committees which are working towards it, and that is how, I mean, it has to start from ground. If we try to go from top, it may not happen the same way that we are visualizing it. So it has to create from the bottom somewhere. So I think that is where the answer would be.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how you can engage with the communities?
I mean, participation is the key, right? Until unless if you don't participate as a city as well, and when we work within the communities, we also work with the people. It's not like we just go and paint and come back, but rather spend time, be with them, understand where they're coming from. Like for that JR's project Inside Out, and when we walked into Sassoon, we photographed it, but it looks as easy, but it wasn't. People were not ready to kind of like come and take out the time and they pose also, but rather we work with them, work with the community leader, we work with more people around, spend time, let them understand what we are doing, what is it going to happen. And as the time passes by, they start to, you have to have people's trust, and you can't get people's trust overnight. You need to spend time. That's the only way. With the time and participation, things can happen. So, I mean, there are I have many examples of like, how different communities also react differently. Just like just an example, when COVID hit, within these different communities, especially when the project was finished in Chennai, in Kannaginagar, we had our own network of people, and because of us, buildings started talking to the other buildings, and everyone started having this conversation. And there was an organic network which got created, which helped them also solve the COVID protocols and the distribution of the food and many other things, which the officers come back and tell us that, oh, I didn't realize that this can also have this kind of benefit at a governance level, which is also kind of like works as an example that if we really go, basically if people talk to people, things happen.
Alisha, any thoughts on it? Yes.
I don't know about public policy.
Yeah, I mean, just the future, like how do you think we can...
I would hope that more school kids are taken to see art, not just historic museum collections, but actually contemporary art, artists working on huge street art murals. Hopefully that can happen as part of the NUAF, right, to meet the artists, see the process. Schools of all kinds, right? I think that is definitely something that we need to start thinking creatively about curriculum and visits and things. And I also think that just for people already working in this space, there should be more efforts to work together because there's so many challenges. And I think that's the one thing I've noticed about the art world, at least in Mumbai. I'm not so familiar with Delhi, but in the last few years, there's more collaboration, there's more working together, and I think that is something that's possible, right? Because it's a very small art world. So getting different people together to do things, I think that would be something that we can actually see.
Final thoughts?
Yes, I think crowd working, yes, involving the crowd, and like she said, children, school children. Literally make contemporary art a subject. Literally make contemporary art a subject. I encourage a lot of people and a lot of schools coming to the studio to see the space and all that. And just just one observation. The kind of students that I've got from American School, Ambani School, Bombay Scottish, going down to the NGOs, Akanksha, Teach for India and all that. The level of brightness is the topmost in the lower schools, believe me. I'm telling you, it's phenomenal. Their thirst for knowledge is such that they immediately understand what the space is about. The kind of questions they ask is they are more intelligent than any of the other bigger schools. So what I'm trying to say is, imagine targeting a lot more of these schools. Their understanding and their absorption of contemporary art will become such that one day they'll grow up and they'll sort of force people not to do the stupid stuff but to put the right stuff in the places, So that is what we need to target.
It has to become a system.
Correct.
Like one school will come once a year.
True. Sort of target schools, Yoga has been now taken up in schools as a complete subject. Make contemporary art one of the subjects,
You need to tell Mr. Modi about this.
No.
Maybe one day he'll say Art India or something like that. Yeah, he said, let's tomorrow like India will start doing art now, whatever. Okay, anyway, yeah.
Cool. I mean, I think well, I have some questions and notes, and we can open it out for questions and queries and thoughts and debates. I guess. Anyone has any questions about anything? Generally, takes one person to raise their hand and then everyone starts.
Correct.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vikas. My question to is, since you are making a map of art, will there be a opportunity or a chance to hear about the art from the artist? But is there any way to, like what KT or Bombay 61 is doing from the community perspective? So is there a chance to hear from the community also in that art? So generally what happens, so I come from fisher folk background, let's say. So the history of fisher folk is very less in terms of documentation. So whatever we are hearing or the walks which is happening around the city, it is more of a Portuguese stuff or whatever it has been written from the British era. It is not talking about the Pratap or how it is before. So if it is a map, so just a question or a query you can or a feedback rather. So is there an opportunity to hear from?
Why not? And I think there are artists from the Holi community who are doing great work in sort of sharing that perspective and going.
Maybe is there a perspective, from the community towards
and I think we're seeing more artists who are sort of becoming much more vocal from different communities, not just the Holi.
So I'm Dejan and I am currently an independent designer. So I actually wrote a few PhD proposals to study public art in Mumbai, which was trashed. But I'm here to learn more. And because I was writing these proposals for schools based in Switzerland and Paris, I'm trying to draw a comparison with like India. And you mentioned once or twice about how our sort of viewership has, is borrowing from the Western idea of doing public art.
Yeah, I think that's what.
But oh, sorry. Yeah. But Mumbai being such a sort of melting pot or like a starting point for people from outside of India to come and see here, how do you kind of make this connection or relationship between public art, say in Europe generally, and India as an emerging sort of landscape of public art, of contemporary public art, let's say, for everyone.
Thank you. So the idea of westernization that I was particularly pointing out at was not very specifically to public art, but to placemaking, how we perceive public spaces is, or how we interact with public spaces is what I was really talking about. And when I said that it is borrowed from westernization, is that somewhere, I mean, I agree it's a melting pot. We have people coming over from everywhere, and I'm sure people would want to experience the intimateness of these spaces also in a way. That because I think bazaars is a fantastic example of that. And so bazaars is a great example which is talking about public spaces in Indian context, or how do we use them, or simple things like there are seatings around trees, or there are these little chai tapris which also I see as public spaces where people interact with, and that is something. So when you are in Europe, you want to experience the Europe, and when you are in Bombay, you want to experience the Bombay, and I think that is what is more important. How do we bring that out is something which I feel would be very important. If anybody wants to add.
I mean, you ask a European and say Indian art, and when they come here, you get like it's an overwhelming visual like stimulation, like these hand-painted signs. There are like these colorful posters. There's like on the ground there are like these good car like colorful things on the ground. Like the Japanese friend of mine was very obsessed with on the ground. He's like, I keep looking at the ground because he finds these colorful, shiny packets around, right? For us, it's a kachra, but for him, it's like a different thing. So when you look at it from the outside point of view, then India is like a very different kind of space. We're not coming here to look at street art or something, but the kind of view to experience what India is. And I mean, India is, we have political graffiti, all our wall art forms. Many of our forms, we've been doing like graffiti way before the term, like when the Western graffiti or came into existence. So yeah, I mean, it's we have our own thing, but yeah, now it's all kind of like getting mixed with East and West.
Hi, my name is Samram. I'm working as a sustainability consultant. I had a question regarding outdoor spaces. So there are certain places which are too crowded. Mostly people walk in that direction. An example would be Dadar West Station. So I live near Dadar West. So I noticed that this location can be closed off, possibly, or made into a place where mostly people are allowed to walk instead of cars and bikes. So are there any projects people have worked towards regarding closing off certain sections of road?
Yeah, I mean, pedestrianization is like a topic, and there has been many more pedestrianization projects which has been on. I'm not sure of Mumbai, but I've seen. Yeah, there are many.
We did a talk here with Robert Stevens of Bombay Imagine. Many of the projects what Jastoria had said was about this.
But I don't think they ever worked out.
It didn't work out. No, it didn't work out.
No, I know. So, we met Robert Stevens when he launched this book, maybe I actually worked on that launch, Bombay Imagine, and it's about these unimagined maps and projects of Bombay that didn't happen. And some of them are so fantastic and so simple that and it's so easy to do, it makes the city so much more livable and would have such interesting environmental changes and benefits. So, I mean, it's easy to close down the street and make it livable. Learn from best practices around the world. There are so many. But unfortunately, rather than people go down, Churchgate Station, that thing going down, can't you send those cars down, let people walk across? It was a simple thing. Brinda Somaya had actually talked about in one of my first talks.
Whenever the work starts, it starts from some inspiration. And because inspiration really doesn't come. So my question is, how can you get the inspiration to do this work? Then what made you that the wall should be painted and made and published from this?
So basically, a lot of people have asked me, so where do you get your inspiration from? Most difficult question. Okay, there is no one particular source. And people have this misconception about artists. They say when you go sit on a beach under a coconut tree, that's where you get your ideas. Rubbish. Okay, the ideas come when you're walking through the dirt and the chaos and through the horns of the city. Everything that you see around you. As an artist, I feel, and I'm sure everyone will agree, you absorb a lot. You observe a lot. This chap standing on the balcony, this little dog on the hutgari, this fellow sleeping on the road. These signs and peeled off paint and stuff like that. It all sorts of collects. It all collects together and then comes out once in a while. It's not. Sometimes you go abroad for an art trip or a art camp, and then you come back and they say, okay, fine, now react to that environment and make a sculpture. It doesn't happen like that. It takes time for it to mull. It stays inside. You work around it. You play with the visuals, and then eventually it comes out. So inspiration can strike anyway. I think you have to just be very observant about everything. That's it.
I mean, within public art, you also have to respond to the space. It's like, as an artist, if I'm making a canvas in my own house, I can do whatever. But if I'm putting it in public space at that particular location, then I need to kind of like respond to it, and that is critical and important. So,
Hi Arzan, long time. So my name is Rishi. Involved with a number of issues in Mumbai, but been on a break for a long time. I just thought that I'll add some thoughts. 10 years back, I started something called as Walking Project, which went into oblivion 5 years back. But I just wanted to share thoughts that I understand it's art of placemaking in Mumbai, but I think this panel was less about placemaking and a whole lot more about art. And placemaking is becoming incredibly more important. I don't think we'll ever come to that the way Mumbai is going. First, placemaking as an environmental tool to bring about well-being into the lives of 12 million people is what this really placemaking is all about. I think the whole thing started in America after they removed the soul of their downtowns. And then the whole effort to bring the soul back into the downtown was where the placemaking emerged. And now when I look at a DA road, etc., which I mean I've experienced for 40 plus years now, and you realize that you're removing the soul away from even South Mumbai, which really people would flock from all over to have a good time and get that kind of vibrancy. And so I think we need to maybe have, this is maybe more, we need to have more discussions and maybe panels where, because placemaking is really crucial. 12 million people, I mean, and of course the more elite people would be jet setting between London and Mumbai, like people do Virar, Church, and they can experience London and Paris, everything. But for the people who will never be able to even get a vacation and go out of Mumbai, then their whole place is only their workplace, where their offices, where their residences, where they go for a little bit. And we are seeing an increasingly chaotic Mumbai. Architects have really failed us. I mean, urban planning has failed us. And this is where we will have to do this kind of micro surgeries and try to bring some vitality, joy into our places. And I think that is becoming, and I went to the inauguration of the Sassoon Art Project 2017. Fantastic, it was so much fun, and really looking forward to what you mentioned right now. But again, those are experiences which are so elite. I mean, imagine when we were there at I remember November 2017, you won't find the Aam Aadmi over there at all. And
there were like a lot of fishermen around.
There were, it was a kind of a standalone activity. I'm saying that the whole idea of placemaking is all 12 million people or all 25 million people, and which is where placemaking really becomes so important. You mentioned the other, somebody mentioned over here, but not just pedestrianization, it's such a more complex art. I just wanted to add my two words. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
I was actually looking at my notes on how I wrap this up, and I was like, we've spoken a lot about art, but we have lots of complaints about the city. I was telling them, if you try to overrun in Bombay, it's more like an obstacle race rather than a run. So, I mean, lots of these things kind of add to, but thank you for those, and not having me do the closing notes, so thank you for making my job easier. And now, if you want to add.
Sorry,
No, for sure.
Okay.
And then we can thank Asa.
No, I agree with Rishi, what you said. It's a very important point what you have raised, because Mumbai is a city where 70% of its population is walking, they are pedestrians. So it is extremely important for us to understand how these pedestrians are experiencing the city. There is accessibility, comfort, visual experience, all of that comes into play, and how can that be achieved is very important. And it is true that urban planning has somewhere failed that, but I think there have been some smaller initiatives that have started coming up now with the street project or what all of us have been trying to do in West. But definitely there needs to be more. But the conversations I think have started, which is very helpful. I think, yeah.
Thank you to the panel for sharing such wonderful insight, and Rishi for doing those closing remarks. But the panel was about arts for placemaking, so I think that's why the skew was more towards arts. I did mention to them about tourism, but it's also, besides tourism, I think the arts also has the capacity to rejuvenate an area and bring in livelihood and revenue from the patata vada seller to the cab guy to the mochi who's sitting on that. All those things happen. I saw it when it happened when the Opera House was open. You suddenly saw these buildings around you painted, and all these little restaurants and shops opening up. So the arts does have that pull too, which also uplifts the neighborhood, which is placemaking. And he's talking about doing more sessions. There are two projects we're involved in the near future. One is the Colorado Arts Festival. I mean, it's iconic, it's been around forever, and hopefully we'll be doing some interesting work. Yes, I know it gets crowded, but there's a way of doing it this time to make it a little more manageable. But that's also a wonderful example of revitalizing a whole precinct. I mean, no one knew about the area before that thing. And also, we'll be doing a lot more work with Hanif and Start, so you'll hear a lot more from us on these topics. Thank you for being here. Thank you to IFPI. I don't know where Shika is here, Shika and Sarita, they've been so gracious. I mean, it's like we come here and we don't want to leave, and it's such a great space. So we're going to be back here on the 14th of September, just to let you know, on talk on NFTs again. But that said, thank you for bringing this wonderful weather and being here, and get home safely and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much to our panelists.